Helicopter to Scar. Yeah, just give you the heads up. At 11:35, we're going to return to base for fuel. Yeah, 11:35, we're going to return to base for fuel. Understood, yeah, we can accommodate that, no problem.
Well, hello everyone. It's me, Camilla Tominey, Associate Editor of The Telegraph, here with Gordon Rayner, my fellow Associate Editor. How many Associate Editors have we got at The Telegraph now, Gordon?
Too many.
Far too many.
Two is too many, I think.
But you're well used to this scene, Gordon, because you were the political editor of this paper.
I was.
And we both cover the Westminster beat, and we thought we'd actually accompany this footage, as interesting as it is, of number 10, and that big black door that we're all too familiar with. We thought we'd actually have a chat in the run-up to this announcement's being made. When do we think it might come, Gordon?
Well, these things never ever happen on time, so I imagine we're going to be trying to chat for an hour. So
I know.
We're going to cover a lot of ground, I think.
Well, there's a lot to cover, to be fair. First of all, though, can we just explain, because I think people who aren't in the industry think that the newspapers may have gone a bit mad, in that basically the newspapers have already declared this. The Sunday papers are full of what Liz Truss will do.
Yeah.
Today we've got her whole manifesto, her economic plan. It's regarded as a fait accompli.
Yeah.
Is that sensible? There is somebody in the office who's put some money on 25-1 Rishi getting it.
It's a two-horse race, so you know why not put some money on it? I should explain before I go on. By the way, I was at the dentist this morning, so if I slur.
Can I see your face full on?
I haven't been drinking. It's just that I'm still not.
It's a bit swollen.
Thank you.
If you start dribbling.
If I start dribbling, we'll probably have.
Have you had a filling, Gordon? Have you had a filling?
I have had a filling.
Oh dear.
Too many sweets. Anyway, so I think the reason that everybody has sort of gone with this assumption of Truss is obviously because there have been polls all the way through this Tory leadership contest, which has gone on for ever.
Yeah, too long.
And
3 weeks too long.
All of the polls have had Truss way ahead, and the margin of error is so high. It's a sort of 20-point margin between them in pretty much everything. So that margin is so high that I think people have just felt that there isn't really any room for for Rishi to come back from that. I think what was interesting was that right from the very beginning, we had about a third of the Tory membership who had been polled were saying that they still wanted Boris.
Yes.
They wanted Boris on the ballot paper, and I think that all of those people pretty much were anti-Rishi, because they saw Rishi as being the person who had stabbed Boris in the back. He was the one that had got rid of the person they wanted. So if you take a third of the electorate away from you straight away, that's very hard to then be able to win over enough of what's left.
But also, isn't there this sense among the membership, who are more right-wing, you could argue, than the parliamentary party, that Sunak is Rishi-washy? You know, he's a bit wet on some of these issues. Yes, he did well with furlough, but there are a lot of Tories who are uncomfortable with this idea of state intervention, handing out oodles of cash. However, although she's kept her powder dry, Liz Truss is going to have to come up with multi-billion-pound packages to solve or help people through the cost of living crisis, isn't she? Why has she not been honest about that so far?
Well, because up until now she has been talking to an electorate of Tory members, and as of today, assuming she gets the job, she's going to have to start talking to an electorate of the rest of the country. And they are very, very different electorates, and the Tory members want tax cuts. If we were being brutally cynical about this, we could say, well, Truss has told the Tory members what they want to hear. It's worked. Rishi has not told them what they wanted to hear, and he's paid a price for it. Although, as I said, I think we have to factor in the point about them seeing him as the guy who got rid of Boris Johnson, and they've punished him partly for that. So clearly, Liz Truss didn't want to talk too much about state intervention, because that's not what her platform is built on. Her platform is built on tax cuts and growing the economy. She has said all along that she is not averse to more borrowing. So one of the differential points between her and Rishi Sunak was that Sunak wanted to start paying down the COVID debt straight away. Liz Truss said, well, we don't really need to do that yet, because interest rates are so low.
Yeah, did she want to do it war borrowing type way?
She wanted to wait 3 years before she started paying before we all started paying the money back. And so she's always been open about the idea that she didn't mind borrowing. What she wasn't really open about was just how much borrowing and the sheer scale of the intervention that she might now be contemplating. If we're talking about 100 billion,
are we talking about 100 billion?
I mean, it's if we're talking about everybody in the country being sent a electricity bill or energy bill for £5,000-6,000, and then you've got corporate bills on top of that. So companies which have vastly higher bills. Funnily enough, when my dentist was drilling my tooth, he was telling me about his
energy bill.
His energy bill. They're having a meeting at his practice today to decide what they're going to do about it. So everyone's affected by it. So you don't need to start doing the adding up to see that it's going to be an enormous amount of money.
But then this Thatcherite stick that she's got, which is very much, people need to help themselves first, is contrary to this idea of furlough-esque handouts, right? And that's going to be compromising for her ideologically, I think, because she's set out her stall. One of the attractions about Truss to the membership is this clear vision that we should actually shrink the state and have people become more self-sufficient. So she's got the right vision, but at totally the wrong time for the country.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened is that her vision is collided with reality, hasn't it? And the reality is that people, all they want to know is, how are you going to help me get through the winter? How are you going to help me pay my bills? Are you going to try and keep the bills down? Are you going to give me money to pay my bills? A lot of people are just not going to be able to afford to pay the bills, even approaching the amount that we're talking about them going up to. So she has no choice. She has to do something about that. Otherwise, the Tories will be out at the next election. It's that simple. So it doesn't really matter whether it's her policy or not.
It might be out anyway, of course. I mean, let's talk about delivery here, Gordon, because she's got a sense of urgency about her. We know that, for instance, we're looking at Downing Street now. We're not necessarily going to get this typical parade of cabinet ministers coming in and being appointed one by one. It's going to look very self-indulgent at this time of kind of critical mass. There's already criticism that this race has gone on far too long. It should have been half as long. So because I know you wrote a piece at the weekend saying what's her immediate policy platform for the next 100 days. How quickly is she going to react in the next few hours? When do we think we're going to hear what her grand plans are? And is any of that going to come into the speech at 4 p.m?
I think we'll hear.
A lady here's just
we'll hear
got her high heel caught. I've had this. This has happened to me. Is it? You don't wear high heels often, Gordon, only at the weekend.
Not to work.
And so she's just got her high heel caught there. So we better just cover that. We're providing commentary of the innings. And if we notice anyone or we recognise any of the aides, do shout out, Gordon, because you're good at recognising these faces. But sorry, the policy platform. How quickly are we going to get it?
I think today we'll only hear very broad brush strokes from her about wanting to help people out, that she's going to help people through the energy crisis, that she wants to lower taxes, she wants to shrink the size of government. I think we'll hear all of those things. We'll hear a bit about NHS waiting lists, I think, as well, because that's one of her 3 priorities, and we'll hear about growing, economic growth. So that will set out her sort of top priorities. I think tomorrow, when the new Prime Minister, assuming it's her, goes to see the Queen, she will then be able to do a much fuller speech outside Downing Street with what we're used to seeing.
David Morris, isn't it? Is it?
Yes, I believe you're right.
Is he a supporter of Truss? I think he is.
Now you're asking me.
I know.
I don't have the.
It's interesting.
I think we assume everyone is at this stage.
Well,
because,
isn't it interesting how many people? I mean, how brazenly self-interested are Tory party MPs? Because we did have a few switcheroonies, didn't we? And people are like, I wonder why suddenly. Let's think of some examples. I think Robert Buckland switched, didn't he? Is it because these people just want cabinet roles, Gordon?
Yes. It's a very easy. Yeah. People always say that nobody gives a yes or no answer. That's a yes.
That's a yes. All right, good. And then let's talk about actually before we get onto team. You obviously know her well. I know her well. I did the hustings with her a couple of weeks ago. I found her very personable one-to-one. She's less of a crowd pleaser than Rishi. Rishi's got the kind of boy band member kind of vibe going on. She's more individual. She's more of a solo performer, I'd say. Tell us about her personally. Tell me about some interactions with her. What do you think she's actually like?
I think you're probably right. There are quite a lot of politicians who are like this. People used to say the same about John Major. And they are very often very easy to get on with one-to-one. They can very often be quite candid one-to-one. They can be quite funny. All things which they can't necessarily do when they're on TV talking about serious issues, especially in a time of crisis. And so they have to sort of, depress their personality a little bit for the sake of appearances. And I think that some politicians are very good at being able to do that, but still get their personality across. And others do it perhaps a little bit too much, so you don't really see the person coming through.
Yeah.
And I think she's in that latter category, isn't she? And
She's
she gets
quite
accused
funny.
of being wooden.
She is quite funny in real life, so to speak.
But a lot of it is the sort of thing that you couldn't really go on TV and talk, you know, and
what you
and
mean?
chat about.
Some of the humour's a bit close to the bone, isn't it? She's quite dry humoured.
Yeah, a bit close to the bone. You know, you can have I mean.
She's an eyebrow-raised type of humorist, I would say.
Yeah, it can be a little bit, you know, she can be a bit risque when she wants to be. And that's great when you're having a chat with somebody, or if you're having, you know, sitting across a dinner table. But you can't really get away with that in a public forum. And Rishi Sunak is very good at bringing a lot of energy. I think that's the difference.
It's like a little Duracell bunny.
Yeah, he is. I think also with Rishi, what you see on TV is much closer to what you see in person.
Yes.
And so for him, that's easier because he's not necessarily the person who is going to, you know, have any sort of very, as you say, you know, off colour or close to the bone jokes with you.
No.
So he doesn't, you know, he doesn't really need to sort of tone himself down too much. And he is someone who is very sort of energetic, you know, on the front foot, you know, optimistic about everything. He's got that sort of California, dare I say it, you know, sort of, you know, optimism about him, you know, etc. So Liz has to be two different people, and I think that's difficult.
Somebody was saying to me who had worked with her in the past, look, she's great when she's riding high on the crest of a wave, which she has been during this election process because she knows she's well in the lead.
Yeah.
You know, will she, quote, revert to type when things get tough? There's going to be a honeymoon period, and then things are going to get very, very tough for her very quickly. What I'm interested in is she's going to be absolutely eaten alive by Twitter and the left.
Yeah.
Will she cope? How much does she care what people think?
I think she's pretty thick-skinned. I mean, she's spent most of her career being, I think, underestimated. I mean, let's face it. Until quite recently, how many people were talking about Liz Truss as being a potential prime minister? So I think she's, you know, I remember at the last reshuffle when Boris did his last reshuffle, a lot of commentators were saying Truss was going to be out of the cabinet.
Yeah.
And she ended up being foreign secretary. So I think she knows that people have this sort of vision of her as being somebody who, you know, is a bit wooden. They interpret that as meaning that she is, you know, she's not the most capable politician perhaps, which I think is probably unfair. And so I think she's been used to that. She's been in the cabinet for longer than anybody else, continuously. So she's a survivor. She you know, she's used to criticism. I don't think she's going to worry too much about what people are saying about her on Twitter. I think she'll just get on with the job in hand. I don't know whether there's going to be any honeymoon period at all, to be honest.
No, that might be right.
Because I think whereas, you know, Boris or even say Gordon Brown were coming in at a time when you know, there were things to look forward to, or there were things that they could sell to the public as being positive visions. There's not a lot of positivity that she can really, realistically, try to bring to the table right now. She's straight into crisis management. She's straight into, here's how I'm going to try and make things less bad than they are going to be.
Yeah.
She can't say, you know, she can't do the sunlit upland speech.
But she needs to look like a really safe pair of hands and steadying the ship. On the previous Captain Birdseye, Boris Johnson, how does she solve a problem like Boris? Because you've got this John Cruddas movement, which you've referred to, about him still being popular with swathes of the party, and he's been wronged, and we're all meant to be having buyer's remorse. What does he do now? I mean, he could, I suppose, end up back writing for us or someone else, and then what's his column shtick? His column shtick is going to have to be criticising what the next person is doing.
Yeah.
That's going to be difficult for Liz. You know, does she want him proverbially inside the tent or outside it? And yet she's ruled out giving him a cabinet position. But I understand they are quite close, Gordon.
Yeah, they are. We know they are. And she's, you know, she's always been a huge fan of his. He seems to be a fan of hers. He's been very complimentary about her during the leadership contest. He made jokes about, you know, the next Prime Minister, whoever she may be. And I think one of the most interesting things that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 days is this suggestion that he's not even going to go to conference, which is in, you know, a month's time.
But that's nicer to her than it was to Theresa May, right?
Yeah. I mean, he did go to conference for Theresa May and he completely dominated it. And I think he knows that. He's clearly sufficiently supportive of Truss that he wants to help her out and do the right thing by her. And he knows that he's a rock star, that if he turns up at conference, whether you like him or hate him, this story will be all about him. It'll be whatever he says or does will be on the front page of the paper.
Yeah.
And if it varies one iota from what she says, there'll be Boris is, trying to point, it's a split.
I know, but then he needs that publicity to maintain his own profile. If you're just joining us, by the way, it's Camilla Tominey, Associate Editor of The Telegraph, joined by my fellow Associate Editor of The Telegraph, Gordon Rayner, former political editor of this newspaper. We can see the Union flag there. We're looking at Downing Street. We're waiting for this announcement, which should come in about 20 minutes onwards. And we're just chatting generally about this assumption that it's going to be Prime Minister Truss in Liz We Truss in the next half hour being announced, because that's the way the polling and all of the insider whispers are suggesting. And we're chatting about her as an individual. And Gordon, let's talk about the people close to her. So we feel it's a shoo-in now that Kwasi Kwarteng becomes the next chancellor.
Yeah.
Talk me through some of the other key players in a Truss administration, and also how she's going close to them. I think I might write something later on this relationship she's got going with Therese Coffey. I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we take Kwasi first off, as a lot of people will know, Truss wrote a book, or was a co-author of a book called Britannia Unchained in 2012. She wrote that with a group of 2010 intake MPs, so they were all newbies at the time. Priti Patel was one of them, Kwasi was one of them, Truss, and then we had Chris Skidmore, who's been a minister, and Dominic Raab. And so they were all very close together, and Simon Clarke was one of the people who was researching for the book, and he was not an MP at the time, subsequently has become an MP, and probably certainly will be in her cabinet if it's her. So they were very like-minded. So certainly as far as Kwasi goes, and interestingly as far as Priti goes, so our assumption is she's out now.
And Raab.
And Raab.
Which is weird because they're the arch Brexiteers. But
exactly.
anyway, carry on.
Raab is understandable because he came up very strongly for Rishi.
Why?
Because
Don't you think that was career suicide?
Well, it's turned out to be, but at the time...
and then he told Will, our colleague Will Hazel, who's just started on the Sunday Telegraph at the weekend, he's got a 50-50 chance of retaining his seat. I don't understand what Raab was thinking.
No. Well, bear in mind that in the early days of the MPs rounds of voting, Rishi was on top. And in fact, he was all the way through to the end, although she's now overtaken him in terms of MP support. But... so he thought he was backing a winner, and I'm afraid that in a two-horse race, some people are going to back a loser, and our assumption is that that loser will be Rishi. But we have to have all of these conversations with the proviso that there is this outside chance that the polls have got it wrong, because all we have to go on is the polls. We haven't seen any.
Well, we do team Rishi in a
piles
minute.
of papers.
Let's balance it out. No, we'll do team. But Kwasi, Truss is very much saying, I'm going to take on the Treasury. I'm going to change the orthodoxy. She's planning a revolution. Is Kwasi the guy to do it? Because every time people say this, a chancellor goes into number 11 and then they, quotes, go native.
Well, Osborne didn't. And I think what she is hoping, if she gets the job, is that this will be the first number 10, number 11 setup since the days of Cameron and Osborne, when you have a number 10 outfit and a Treasury working hand in glove and actually pulling in the same direction.
This was Cummings's vision, by the way. This was Dom Cummings's vision.
It was.
Controlling the Treasury.
It was. And then they got through two chancellors, neither of whom quite managed it. I think the difference is that Kwarteng is so closely aligned with her in terms of the free market, free enterprise vision that they both have. I think he is quite hard line on a lot of this stuff. I think he wants to perhaps...
Oh, I'm just looking at who's arriving here. I can see Andrew Bridgen, friend to the media, often available for a quote.
And we should probably explain that.
Piling in, tell us what
the announcement is actually going to be made at the
Graham
QE2.
Brady's there, look.
Yeah, so the announcement is going to be made at the Queen Elizabeth II Conference Centre, not Downing Street. So although we've been looking at pictures of Downing Street, all we're going to see there is Boris Johnson coming in and out.
Geoffrey Clifton Brown is there. Is that Andrew Stevenson standing up, showing people to their seats? So this announcement's coming from Graham Brady there. That's in the centre. He's the chairman of the 1922. So
he's arrived, which is a good sign, because it suggests that the announcement might be on time.
Oh, hang on. Is that Steve Bray or is somebody playing music?
It looks like Sajid Javid walking away in the middle. No,
maybe he's just found out he hasn't got a cabinet job.
Yes.
So we're keeping our eye, for those of you watching, we're keeping our eye on number 10 because that's where the broadcasters are. But we're also keeping our eye on the Queen Elizabeth II Centre, which is just opposite Westminster Abbey, because that's where Tory MPs are now gathering to hear who is going to be their esteemed leader.
Yes.
I would like to know where the music's coming from. Maybe the producers can help us with that. That's inside. It's basically happening from inside the event. It's a kind of like... So
someone's decided to play The Lunatics Are Taking Over the Asylum.
What is that song?
It is The Lunatics Are Taking Over the Asylum. Yeah.
Are they being ironic? Is this a CCHQ moment of irony?
I think it's Tory banter.
Things can only get better, has clearly been consigned to the waste heap. Sorry, we were talking about the Treasury, we were talking about Kwasi. Is Kwasi a hard nut? I mean, is he going to take on all of these civil servants who are apparently left-leaning Romaniacs?
Well, he says he is.
Right.
And that's the proof of the pudding will be in the tasting, won't it? And I don't know. I mean, do we remember Sajid Javid or Rishi sort of saying they were going to do the same thing quite the same extent? Probably not. Look, he's going to find it difficult. They always do. A bit like the NHS, nobody's ever quite managed to really sort of grasp the nettle when it comes to the Treasury. He talks about a £1 in, £1 out orthodoxy, doesn't he? And what Truss wants to do is to say, we've got...
Hang on a minute. So Tories out is being cried by the people outside?
Is it Steve Bray?
Have people infiltrated this
Well,
QE2?
I'm hoping it's not the MPs that are waiting for the result, otherwise that is going to be quite bad for them.
I think it's outside. I'm just getting clarification of that. Do we think that's outside, those watching these events from behind the scenes? Yeah, as far as we're aware, they are. Those are the scenes outside. Inside, I think, is heavily guarded. To be fair, if you go in the QE2, that is where Rishi, of course, launched his campaign. There's a heavy security presence, because I almost didn't get into it. I was running late because I was showboating on the telly.
And it's where we saw Boris announced and did his speech only 3 years ago, when I remember having a conversation then with Rishi Sunak on the day that was happening in that room that we're seeing now. When he was a rising star. And,
so just to fill you in with who this is, that's Graham Brady. He's saying hello there to Stefan, who's a photographer for AP, very good photographer.
Press Association,
Is he? Press Association?
Andrew Stevenson on the right.
Andrew Stevenson, party chairman. Will he still be party chairman?
There's Michael Fabricant, unmistakably.
Will Andrew Stevenson, who has, to be fair to him, sort of shepherded this hustings process through from start to finish, is he still going to be chairman, Gordon?
Because I think he might be.
Really? I thought Grant Shapps might be in the fray if it's Rishi, and then talk of Ian Duncan Smith being offered it, but he wants a department.
I think RDS might have to settle for leader of the House. Oh my goodness!
Hang on a minute.
Graham Brady is standing at the podium half an hour early.
Oh no!
Oh no! He's just gone and he's just teasing. He's just teasing us.
Stand down, ladies and gentlemen. What is he? He's just checking he's got the winner. Is he going to produce it from an envelope in the style of the... How funny would it be if they get the wrong person?
I think, if we're going to be very nerdish about this, I think what we're going to see is we'll see Graham Brady getting a piece of paper out from his inside jacket pocket and unfolding it and then announcing the results in very dramatic fashion.
Does the winner get told in advance a little bit, Gordon, so that they know?
They get told 10 minutes before it's announced, apparently.
Where do we think that happens? In a little side room?
It'll be, yes. So they'll be literally backstage. They'll be behind those blue hoardings that we can see there at some point soon. And they'll be told, and then he'll announce it, and then the winner will come out and get a big round of applause and a cheer from all the people who are suddenly very much on side with them and said all along that they wanted it to be them.
Someone's arriving. Somebody important's arriving. If you see a Range Rover or a Discovery, I always think it's someone important because of our royal coverage days, Gordon.
Yes.
Blacked out windows and motorcade. That looks like it could be a foreign secretary because Rishi wouldn't have that entourage, would he? Because he's not a cabinet minister.
He's an MP.
I think that might be Liz arriving. We will keep you posted with that.
Could be a member of the royal family deciding to pop in and make a guest appearance.
It's the Duke of York.
Yes.
If you're watching us, folks, thank you for joining us on the Telegraph live stream. Obviously, you can also see all of the action on the blog, which our colleague Jack Maidman and colleagues are updating by the second. So we're watching now. These are the scenes inside the QE2 building, which is opposite Westminster Abbey, where the leader of the Tory leadership race is going to be announced in the next half hour. Graham Brady is there, the chairman of the 1922 committee, in position. He's checked the microphone. Everything seems to be working. Tory MPs now gathered to see whether their choice or the opposition has won. All of the evidence points to it being Liz Truss. We think that she may have just arrived in a blacked out motorcade in the last few minutes. Graham Brady will take both candidates aside beforehand, tell them who's won, and then we expect, Gordon, I believe, a short speech here, but the main speech from the winner is coming when and where?
So that'll be tomorrow, outside Downing Street at the
Do we not get something at 4 today? Or have I misread that? We might get something at 4 today, I believe.
Okay, well,
and then it's the Balmoral job, possibly.
Then they go to Balmoral, but then I would expect there to be another speech.
I've just seen the Queen's speech. Yes.
Yes, I don't. I could be wrong about this.
I don't think there will be a.
I don't think there'll be a lectern moment today because they won't be the Prime Minister yet.
Oh, okay.
So they may do a speech, but probably not in front of Downing Street.
All right, I'm going to get I'm looking at our own hour-by-hour guide written by Daniel Martin here. 12:15 onwards gets announced. The winner will do a short speech. The candidate who has been told they've won the contest 10 minutes in advance. They'll do a speech now. You're right, Gordon, as is ever the case. The winner this afternoon and this evening will finalise their choices for cabinet and wider ministerial roles. Let's just see who's getting out of this car. We think it's Liz Truss. So you're right.
That's a different car, Camilla.
Is it?
If we called it right on Liz Truss before, that can't be her because that's a different car.
Well, no, I thought it was a black car followed by a Discovery.
You might be. Oh, you could be right.
Come on, Liz. Will there be... there's the next
Kwasi.
Chancellor. Potentially the next Chancellor there, Kwasi Kwarteng. Sorry, just to give you the timetable, folks, for tomorrow. So today, we get the winner in the next half hour. We get a short speech. We then get a cabinet. Tomorrow, it all kicks off at 8:30 a.m. Boris Johnson's going to give his farewell speech on the steps of Number 10. He's then going to go to Aberdeen Airport to go and see the Queen. He's going to fly separately to whoever wins. He goes to see the Queen late morning, and then he departs. And then in the afternoon, the Queen then appoints the new Prime Minister. The new Prime Minister returns from seeing the Queen in Balmoral. They will arrive at Downing Street at 4 p.m. and make their first speech as Prime Minister there. And then we'll expect more cabinet announcements and also for the winner, Gordon, to take those congratulatory phone calls from world leaders.
Yes.
Liz Truss has said her first call will be to whom? Your starter for 10, Gordon Rayner.
Is it going to be President Zelensky?
You've just read that off my screen. I thought you were going to say John...
I read it off your screen and then thought that's just what I was about to say.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has just arrived, I think, and he's fed in. A cabinet role for him, do we think? The Brexiteer poster boy, Gordon Rees-Mogg, is he going to end up in the Treasury at last?
My hunch is he could be Chief Secretary to the Treasury. I think she wants him in the Treasury team. There is also a possibility he could be Business Secretary. That has also been speculated on. I think it'll be one of those two jobs. I can't see him going outside of that.
Isn't it interesting that actually he has shaken things up considerably as this Brexit opportunities / government's efficiencies minister, and therefore he might be better off just remaining in that role?
There seems to be a fairly definite steer that he's not going to carry on doing that job. Look, I mean, anything's possible because, as we know, reshuffles don't always go according to plan, and it just takes one person to say, actually, I don't want the job that you've just offered me, and then they've got to start again. So we'll see, but I would imagine Chief Secretary or Business Secretary.
We were going to talk about Therese Coffey because she seems to be one of Liz Truss's besties.
Well, I mean, she has been helping to run her campaign. She was her campaign chairman, I think, wasn't she, to when the whole thing kicked off. They are very closely aligned on policy. Therese Coffey is someone who is very much under the radar. You don't see her out and about very much. She, at work and pensions, she does a pretty unglamorous job, which doesn't tend to get an awful lot of headlines. She just sort of quietly gets on with what needs to be done. It is the biggest spending department. I mean, it's something which I always sort of have to remind myself that we talk about the amount of money that gets spent on the NHS, but Therese Coffey is in charge of a department that spends even more than the NHS does. So it's a huge job, and the fact that she's never really attracted any controversy or particularly bad press means that actually she clearly is doing a pretty decent job of it because you don't hear anything bad said about her. And Truss, I think, respects that. I think she appreciates the job she does.
Mark Francois entering. He was one of the first to call for Liz Truss, standing next to Steve Baker, his ERG partner in crime. Let me just read this from Christopher Hope. He's also an associate editor at this newspaper, Christopher Hope.
Yes.
Interesting, he tweets. Tory MPs backing Rishi Sunak have been putting late bets on him to win. One put £10 on him at 9-1 last week. A second put £10 on Sunak at 79-1 this morning.
Wow.
A sensible investment or futile optimism?
Well, if you're offered 79-1 in a two-horse race,
yes,
it's got to be worth a tenner, hasn't it?
Chris Curtis, who's a pollster, has replied simply, "You can't do this to me, Chris."
Yeah, well.
Pollsters are going to be looking extremely foolish, as are newspapers, if Truss doesn't get this, Gordon.
I remember after Brexit, the Brexit vote, and after the Trump vote, that everyone said nobody was going to believe polls anymore because they'd got them horribly wrong on both those occasions. But here we are, going entirely on the polling. The one thing that I think would worry me a little bit if I was Liz Truss is that these polls obviously only matter if they're polls of Tory members, not the general public.
True.
And Tory members are difficult to poll. A lot of them are quite old.
Yes.
If you're trying to reach them with online votes, you're not going to get to those people.
No.
And a lot of the older Tory members might prefer Rishi Sunak because they see him as being more conservative with a small c, and they maybe are worried about the sort of amount of promises that Liz Truss is sort of bandying around. So it's not impossible that it could be much closer than the sort of 60-40 split that we keep hearing about.
Yes. Well, Sunak's people have been briefing that overnight. It's going to be closer than we think. I'm interested in the seating here, Gordon. Does it look like it's sort of bride and groom? Are the different Tory tribes sticking together here? We've got Fabricant sitting next to some of the Brexiteers, it seems. We've got Jacob Rees-Mogg preferring to stand at the back at the moment. I don't know whether he's going to take a seat. They're all filing in. I mean, whether or not they're going to get the result they want, that's a question, actually. Is it difficult for Truss? She's a little bit like Ian Duncan Smith, isn't she? In that she hasn't got the support of a majority of MPs, but she has got the support of a majority of members. There was a bit of briefing about this by Sunak's lot overnight. Doesn't it make it difficult for her if she doesn't have the party on side? She's only got a third of the party. Boris Johnson, of course, famously had 2/3 of the party and the membership.
Well, when you mentioned Ian Duncan Smith, when he was chosen by the membership, the MPs had chosen Ken Clarke by a very small margin. Liz Truss won't want to hear this, but what happened in the end there was that the party decided in the end that the membership would pick the wrong person.
Yes.
And they got rid of him, and he never got to fight an election. And he was replaced with Michael Howard briefly, who then lost, and then they brought in Cameron. So, the timescale between now and the next election is so short that it's difficult to see the Tories deciding within the next 2 years that they want to have another leadership election, and that Truss is no good and that they want somebody else. But that is the most recent example of something similar to this happening in the contest, and then we saw how that ended. So the answer to your question is, yes, it is difficult for her, on top of all the other things she has to worry about.
Yes.
She has to worry about trying to unite the party.
Although, actually, people will say with the converts, albeit they're self-interested people who want cabinet jobs, she has got the majority. Just let's point out two people looking at there, Nadeem Zahawi in the foreground and then Michelle Donnellan in the background. She was Education Secretary for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Nadeem Zahawi, of course, was Education Secretary and is now Chancellor. Do we think they've got a role in a Truss cabinet?
Well, I definitely think Zahawi does. He seemed to be sort of more or less nailed on for Health Secretary, although there are now suggestions that could be Therese Coffey. As we said before, these things do move around a bit. There is a fair bit of speculation that Michelle Donnellan will be brought back in as Education Secretary, although the main problem she has is that she only did the job for 36 hours.
Yes.
And she didn't really play a very canny hand, did she? She took the job, and then 36 hours later she said, actually, no, I'm going to quit. So that's not going to help her cause. But I think Truss does quite like her, and it may be she does have the right sort of background. She's been a minister in that department
Yeah.
before, so she knows the brief.
James Cleverley, he's tipped for Foreign Secretary, Gordon, which will be a big promotion for him. I mean, he's risen through the ranks. He did well as Tory chairman. I think people think he's got lots of energy.
Yeah.
He could have a senior role.
Yeah, and also he has worked with Liz Truss at the Foreign Office.
Yes.
So she's seen him close up. She knows him very well. She has worked alongside him very closely. So she knows if she does give him that job, she knows what she's getting. So we can only assume that, she has seen in him all the qualities that she thinks a Foreign Secretary should have. It's the job she does now. So she's effectively would be, choosing her successor. And that seems to be why he's...
I'm just noticing behind James Cleverley is a very senior number 10 special advisor who used to manage the media grid, which is a formidable task, and make sure that the Prime Minister and all of the Cabinet are on message. Is that going to be a problem for Truss? She needs a Cabinet on message. She doesn't want leaks. But at the same time, she has been warned this weekend by no less than David Davis and other grey hairs not to have a cabinet of loyalists like Boris Johnson appointed, because there's a sense to which they're a bit toothless and they're just there to rubber stamp and be nodding dogs. And actually, we don't want that era repeated.
I think the difference will be that she will appoint people who are loyal, because she just can't afford, with all of the crises that she's going to have to deal with, she can't afford to have people who don't agree with her vision, who are going to try and make life difficult for her. I can't really think of many, if any, people who are overt Rishi Sunak supporters who we think are going to be in a Truss cabinet. However, I think the difference is...
That could be Rishi Sunak just arriving, by the way. I don't know, but it could be. Mind you, it's a bit late, isn't it?
Not unless it's his own,
12.
Not unless it's his own Range Rover. But I think with Truss, the difference is going to be that we are told very much that she does not want to be a presidential-style Prime Minister, that she doesn't want everything to be controlled from the centre like it was certainly when Dominic Cummings was around, that she wants to give people a department to lead and then let them get on with it. And that's certainly what we haven't really been seeing for, the Boris Johnson premiership, frankly. I mean, you and I have both spoken to ministers many times who have complained that they can't get anything done because everything has to go through Downing Street, and then it takes forever because there's this huge log jam.
Yes.
And she wants to avoid that.
Let's just explain some of these spads here then. So that's Jason Stein, who's been working with Liz Truss. Interestingly, our paths crossed because he used to look after Amber Rudd, but also the Duke of York.
But he also worked for Liz Truss before that, when he was
Excuse me.
When she was at Justice. So he goes back a long way.
And then her main spad.
Tom Tugendhat.
There's Tom Tugendhat. Will he have a role, Gordon?
I think he will have a role. My hunch is that he will be. I don't think he's going to get his own department, because he has never been a minister, and no matter how well he may have done in the Tory leadership race, to give somebody a department to run with zero experience is unlikely, I think. So my guess is that he could be a Foreign Office Minister.
Yeah.
He is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. He's all about foreign affairs and China. He's a China hawk like Liz Truss.
Yes.
He could get that brief and be given a attending cabinet role, so that he is seen to be in that cabinet room, but without having a department to run, I think.
Can I just break away and say that the Benny Hill theme tune is now playing inside the Queen Elizabeth II Memorial Hall?
Yes.
Which I think is one of David Cameron's favourite songs. Didn't he say that? Oh no, wasn't it Fastest Milkman in the West or something?
That's right.
But how bizarre.
No, it's outside.
Oh no, it's outside, it's not inside. So somebody is clearly having a laugh, playing the Benny Hill theme tune as Tories go into the building.
That's British politics, isn't it?
Isn't it just?
It's very serious, and at the same time, it can be very daft.
Who might Rishi Sunak have appointed Chancellor?
I think that probably Dominic Raab would have been
that was what was in it for Raab.
A reasonable shout. He was a Rishi ultra, to use a football term, and he's been Foreign Secretary before. So what other jobs could he have given him other than either Home Sec or Chancellor?
Home Sec, actually. I mean, former lawyer.
Maybe, yeah. Let's Andrew Jenkin in the pink talking to Damien Green there, who was Theresa May's
former Deputy Prime Minister.
De facto Deputy Prime Minister,
Let's
as we
talk
always
about
had to write.
De factos or facto Deputy PMs.
Yeah, or
we
real
think
deputies.
she's going to have... Well, I thought that she was going to give David Frost some sort of position, but she can't because he's in the House of Lords. Explain that.
No, she could do.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing to stop. I mean, there are Lords in the Cabinet. We have the Leader of the Lords in the Cabinet. We had Derry Irvine was in the Cabinet when I think he was in the House of Lords. So, there's no problem in Lord Frost being given a job such as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster.
Yes,
I think
CDL, which used to be occupied by Michael Gove,
Yes.
who apparently used to like referring to himself as CDL.
Well, it's a lot less of a mouthful than Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster,
Indeed
I suppose,
so.
isn't it? But I think if he doesn't take the job, I think that will be because there has been a lot of toing and froing over exactly what that job would entail. And I think if he doesn't feel that he's getting enough to do, frankly, he will say no. Most
people taking their seats now. That's Graham Stewart, the MP, at the front. We've seen Truss at the building. Truss has arrived at the building. I've just seen Hudson Rowe there. He's standing. He masterminded Kemi Badenoch's media campaign, did very well with that. We think Badenoch's definitely a shoo-in because Truss has said that she will appoint her to her cabinet.
Well, we're not very sure what job she's going to get.
Levelling up, because she's been in that department under Gove anyway.
I think that would probably make a lot of sense. There's a lot of talk about her possibly getting education. I think she could, but
bit inexperience for education.
Well, yes, and it was suggested to me sort of from quite early on that she didn't actually want education or culture, because she's very much associated with culture wars at the moment, and she wants to get away from that.
Yes.
And she doesn't want it to be all about, oh, here's this culture wars person that is now going to wage a culture war on, the culture or education.
Do we think Kemi Badenoch's a future PM, Gordon? I mean, she did exceptionally well from a standing start, and there's this suggestion, isn't there, that if they lose the next general election and appointed her as a leader, she could really get some really valuable experience to prepare her for a run.
Yeah, but then again, I think she's got a lot of attributes that would stand her in good stead for that. But how often have we been, not just you and I, but how often have people been very good at picking future prime ministers a long way ahead?
I'm just going to interrupt you there just to say, seeing Ben Wallace there sitting next to Dominic Raab, who we've discussed, and Nadeem Zahawi.
Could be the current and the future deputy prime minister sitting next to each other, perhaps.
Well, do we reckon, or do we think that she will keep Wallace at defence? We've still got the war in Ukraine to contend with. He's
Definitely
done a very good job, and he's been extremely loyal to Truss, hasn't he?
He's going to stay there, I think.
Yeah.
But I wonder if she might give him deputy PM, because he remember was the choice of the members according to those early polls. They wanted Wallace to be the prime minister, and so he has a lot of support from the membership, and indeed from MPs. So she may want to give him a reward for that, and show that he is he's had a promotion effectively, rather than just saying stay where you are and everything's as you were.
Very good point. You're watching the Telegraph live stream of events inside the Queen Elizabeth II Memorial Centre. It's where the winner of the Tory leadership race is going to be announced, we think, in the next 10 minutes. Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, is there. He's ready. He's going to be speaking to the candidates beforehand to tell them who has won. Obviously, all of the speculation is pointing towards it being Liz Truss, who is the victor in this race that's gone on over the summer. I'm joined here by Gordon Rayner, my fellow associate editor at The Telegraph. I'm Camilla Tominey, and we're providing this commentary, but of course we will be quiet as soon as Sir Graham takes to the lectern, which could be any minute now, Gordon. Feelings behind stage doors. It's interesting, isn't it, that during the hustings, Sunak and Truss studiously avoided each other. There's no love lost there, is there, Gordo?
Well, you can tell us more about that. You chaired one of the hustings events. You saw it at close quarters.
They didn't want their paths to cross, I was told, and I had to time everything so that they didn't. And let's be honest, there's no place in a Truss cabinet for Rishi, and no place in a Rishi cabinet for Truss, is there?
No, definitely not. And I think this is going to be a bit of a problem, because clearly there are a lot of people aside from Rishi Sunak who are very wedded to the Sunak campaign, who will not feel that that Liz Truss is the right person for the job, and vice versa, whoever wins. And so that is going to be a problem. Every prime minister has to unite their party. Parties are always factional, and it was the same with Boris Johnson. He didn't. Let's not forget, Boris Johnson didn't really have a huge faction behind him when he was chosen for the job. He was the guy who got chosen because he could get Brexit done, and he just happened to be the right person in the right place at the right time for a very specific job. And he got that job done, and that's part of the reason that I think the MPs felt they could get rid of him.
Yes.
So, they all have to do that, but it'll be, as Truss says, she's all about delivery. If she delivers, then people will very quickly get in behind her, I'm sure.
We've talked about what Boris Johnson might do next, or indeed what Truss might do about Boris Johnson. Presuming he doesn't win, what's your predictions for what Rishi Sunak will do next, Gordon?
I think he'll stand down at the next election if he...
I asked him this and he denied it.
Of course he denied it. I mean, he can't very well say, I want to be Prime Minister, but by the way, if I'm not, I'm gonna disappear off to, California maybe, and start a new life there. But if he can't... Look, what's going to happen is, at the next general election, either Liz Truss wins, and Rishi's still out, or Labour wins, and he's still on the backbenches.
If Labour wins, isn't Truss out?
Yes, what I'm saying is, if you're Rishi Sunak,
yes,
you've got 2 years on the backbenches.
It's an all-lose
then
situation.
Either Truss wins and then you're still frozen out, or Labour win and the whole party's frozen out.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be a minister again anytime soon.
Yeah.
Potentially in the next 7 years. So.
Mind you, I say that, does Liz Truss, I mean, they might stick with, it depends what the election result is, we're fast-forwarding too much. Now that is Therese Coffey, who we've been speaking about, who is very close to Liz Truss. She's there in the white jacket, just being hugged. That is Camp Truss, isn't it, on steroids, because you've got
Manuel Jarawadina on the left-hand side of the picture there.
He's being tipped for,
I think business.
For something, business, maybe. Yes.
Yeah, or trade.
We've got Michael Fabricant sitting just behind Therese Coffey there. In the middle, we've got Brandon Lewis. He introduced Liz Truss for the Telegraph hustings. He's actually ripe for it. We haven't discussed him. Brandon Lewis always comes up smelling of roses, doesn't he? He ends up, he's quite a subtle little operator, Brandon Lewis, because he ends up in really senior roles.
Very experienced, seen as a safe pair of hands. I think he's probably very, very shrewdly doesn't try to come out too strongly in favour of one side or the other. There is a suggestion, I think he probably will be back in the cabinet. He was Northern Ireland Secretary, he resigned from that job. And it's not impossible that they could send him back to Northern Ireland. He's very passionate about it when you talk to him.
Yes.
He feels that he's got unfinished business there.
Yes.
I don't think he would necessarily turn down that job, but also
with the protocol needing sorting out.
Exactly.
I mean, it's politically expedient to be involved in a successful outcome for that, right?
Yeah.
If there can be a successful outcome.
Or it could be that he becomes Justice Secretary.
Right.
He is a trained barrister. He's never practiced as a barrister, but he is qualified as a barrister, so he knows the law. Even talk of Sajid Javid making a comeback and being Northern Ireland Secretary. I'm not sure about that. I just think, given that he's been Chancellor, does he want to take on Northern Ireland? I don't know. I mean, he certainly would be capable, and he's a possibility, but whether he'd want the job, I'm not sure.
It's 27 minutes past 12. You're watching, I know, it's tantalisingly close.
Who's it going to be?
Who's it going to be? I mean, we have been assuming it's going to be Truss. It's going to send absolute shockwaves through that room, and then Downing Street, and then the country, if it does turn out to be Sunak.
Yes, and you and I will have to do a bit of a massive reverse ferret.
We will then
just
have
spent the last hour talking about more or less nothing but Liz Truss.
Let's just continue in that vein, simply because Tory members, we think, largely voted in the first few weeks, and then straw polls were taken, and it seemed as if she was 2 votes ahead of Sunak's 1. It could end up being closer. We've just heard from our colleague Chris Hope, Chopper, who we're going to be doing a podcast with him later, folks. So there's more to listen to on the Telegraph website.
Never ending.
I tell you what, we are fully multimedia these days, aren't we, Gordon?
Oh, yes.
You and I just used to file stories and just, send them up the pipes, and then maybe they'd be published in the next couple of days. Well, now we are fully 24/7 journalists.
I remember having to file stories from phone boxes, Camilla. So that's
so did I. Yeah. The copy takers. Is there much more of this?
Yes, absolutely.
How much more of this have you got? Oh, another 800 words.
Yes.
But we're looking at the lectern there. We are assuming right now that Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the 1922 committee, I must point out, once spoken of as a potential prime minister in the desperate days
by
of
himself. I'm
Brexit.
not sure anybody else was, in fairness to Mr. Graham, and I mean that without being disrespectful.
No, I know. He is now currently breaking the bad news to one candidate and the good news to another.
Well, yeah, they should know by now. So.
They should know by now. 30 seconds out from 12:30. Is this late? Is it not meant to have been 12:15? Is it meant to have been 12:30?
No, it's meant to be 12:30.
Okay.
I mean, these things, if they do it on time, that'll be a first, because political events never ever start on time.
You say that though. When he was announcing the MPs' votes, they were absolutely punctual.
Yes, that's
true. Graham Brady doesn't strike me as a man who presses snooze on his alarm clock.
No. Well, I suppose in fairness, he's got one job. So, it's...
But he's a beacon of efficiency, isn't he, Graham Brady?
Yes.
He knows where all the bodies are buried.
He's not going to be involved in last-minute emergency meetings about the situation in Russia or Ukraine or China, is he?
Speaking of which, I wonder what Boris Johnson's doing right now. Do we think he'd be watching this, Gordon?
Well, he'd be listening to us right now, obviously.
Of course he is,
obviously. Don't know why you even had to ask that.
Former colleague.
Yes.
Hello, Prime Minister. Thank you for listening in. Thank you to all of you for listening in. You're listening to the Telegraph live stream.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Silence. We'll go to it now.
Chairman of the Conservative Party.
Good afternoon. Today marks the culmination of the Conservative leadership election. It's been a huge honour to be co-chairman of our party, working alongside Ben Elliott. And I'm hugely proud of the way everyone has worked together to deliver this contest, which has shown the Conservative Party to be in good voice and good strength. We've held 12 regional hustings, the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, attended by 20,000 party members. It's been a long campaign. 20,000 party members and watched online by over 2.5 million members of the public. The members' hustings involved our two fantastic candidates undergoing 14 hours of questioning and taking more than 600 questions from party members. And these hustings were in addition to the multiple online hustings and the media interviews. This concluded last Wednesday with a fantastic event at the Wembley Arena, attended by 6,000 party members. I'd like to pay tribute to Darren Mott and the dedicated team at CCHQ for running the membership ballot. I'd also like to thank my parliamentary colleagues for their support throughout the process, and in particular members of the 1922 executive, ably led by Sir Graham Brady, who has been the returning officer throughout the process. But most of all, I'd like to thank our party members, who've undertaken the solemn duty of choosing our next leader and our next Prime Minister. Our members have engaged constructively, positively and thoughtfully in the process, whilst also keeping busy getting our message out across the United Kingdom, something I've seen at the 87 constituency associations I've campaigned with in the last few weeks. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to say a huge thank you to our outgoing leader and Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. His leadership through Brexit, through the pandemic, and now through the war in Ukraine was never going to be easy, but time and again he rose to the challenge and delivered for our country. It is now essential that we come together as a party and unite behind our new leader and our new Prime Minister to continue Our new Prime Minister will build on the outgoing Prime Minister's legacy and continue to deliver prosperity, opportunity and security for everyone. So with no further ado, will you please warmly welcome our two fantastic candidates, Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss. And ladies and gentlemen, to announce the results of our leadership election, please welcome our returning officer, Sir Graham Brady.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everybody. On the 7th of July, the Prime Minister announced his resignation as leader of our party. The 1922 committee then organised 5 ballots over an 8-day period, concluding the part of the leadership election for which we have responsibility, and putting forward the candidates to the National Convention and CCHQ for the programme of hustings all over the United Kingdom and the ballot of the membership that is now concluded. I work closely with the board of the party, CCHQ and Civica Electoral Services to ensure that all qualifying members had the opportunity to vote and to ensure that our ballot was secure as well as free and fair. I'd like to thank the 1922 executive, and in particular my fellow officers, Naz Ghani, Will Ragg, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, Bob Blackman and Gary Sambrook, and our staff for all of their help and support, especially during the administration of the parliamentary rounds of voting. I would like to thank the party board and staff for all their hard work organising the hustings, which allowed so many members to see the candidates in action, whether in person or online. I'm grateful to CES for the professionalism with which they have dealt with the ballot in distributing, collecting and counting the votes, both online and by post. Finally, I want to thank all the party members who have taken this responsibility very seriously, all the candidates who put themselves forward for election, and in particular my colleagues Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, who ran such excellent campaigns in the full glare of media scrutiny and who showed themselves to be outstanding candidates to be the leader of our party. Now the result. I, Sir Graham Brady, the returning officer for the Conservative and Unionist Party leadership election, declare that the total number of eligible voters was 172,437. The turnout in the election was 82.6%. The total number of votes rejected was 654. The total number of valid votes given to each candidate was as follows. Rishi Sunak, 60,399. Liz Truss, 81,326. Therefore, I give notice that Liz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Liz, come up on stage.
Well, thank you, Sir Graham. It's an honour to be elected as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. I'd like to thank the 1922 committee, the party chairman and the Conservative Party for organising one of the longest job interviews in history. Thank you very much. I'd also like to thank my family, my friends, my political colleagues and all of those who helped on this campaign. I'm incredibly grateful for all of your support. I'd like to pay tribute to my fellow candidates, particularly Rishi Sunak. It's been a hard-fought campaign. I think we have shown the depth and breadth of talent in our Conservative Party. And I also want to thank our outgoing leader, my friend, Boris Johnson. Boris, you got Brexit done. You crushed Jeremy Corbyn. You rolled out the vaccine and you stood up to Vladimir Putin. You were admired from Kiev to Carlisle. Friends and colleagues, thank you for putting your faith in me to lead our great Conservative Party, the greatest political party on earth. I know that our beliefs resonate with the British people. Our beliefs in freedom, in the ability to control your own life, in low taxes, in personal responsibility. And I know that's why people voted for us in such numbers in 2019. And as your party leader, I intend to deliver what we promised those voters right across our great country. During this leadership campaign, I campaigned as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. And my friends, we need to show that we will deliver over the next 2 years. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply. And I will deliver on the National Health Service. But we all will deliver for our country. And I will make sure that we use all the fantastic talents of the Conservative Party, our brilliant members of Parliament and peers, our fantastic councillors, our MSs, our MSPs, all of our councillors and activists and members right across our country. Because, my friends, I know that we will deliver, we will deliver, and we will deliver. And we will deliver a great victory for the Conservative Party in 2024. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's Liz Truss, Gordon. No surprises there. She's been announced as the winner of the Tory leadership contest with 81,326 votes to Rishi Sunak's 60,399.
Yeah.
Closer than we thought, Gordon?
Yeah, that's a 4-3 majority rather than the 2-1 that people were talking about. Couldn't help thinking there as she walked off beaming that this might be her happiest moment as Tory leader, because it's just going to get tougher and tougher from here, isn't it?
Indeed. So if you're just tuning in, you'll have watched that announcement by Graham Brady. You'll have seen Liz Truss's speech. It's Gordon Rayner, the associate editor of the Telegraph, and I, Camilla Tominey, just discussing it, just finishing off this live stream that thousands of you have been watching. So thank you very, very much for your custom and loyalty. I mean, the message there was clear. Deliver, 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 she said, Gordon. And she listed her 3 priorities as cutting taxes, well, we knew that, sorting out the problem with energy bills and supply, and then she said, and delivering on the NHS. What does she mean by that?
I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't know.
I think what she's talking about, well, we know that what she has talked about during the campaign is that she wants to get waiting lists down. She wants to sort out this sort of terrible backlog that was caused by COVID. She's talked about taking that £13 billion extra that is being raised by the national insurance hike, and giving that to social care in order to free up more space in hospitals. But that money is going to have to come out of general taxation. So she's going to have to find that money from somewhere, and we don't know where. So I think that's what she means when she says she's going to deliver on the NHS.
The delivery is key. There's an urgency there. She has to prove with just, less than 2 years potentially to go to a next general election. She is going to have to deliver and then some, right? Yeah,
so 2 things there. She specifically said 2024, didn't she, for the next general election. Not a massive surprise, but that should kill off speculation that she might call an early election. She could actually go as late as January 2025, but that's highly unlikely. I think what was interesting was that she talked about how she wants to deliver on what we promised voters. So she's talking about the manifesto.
Yes.
And we know that one of her key priorities, or one of the things that she's very conscious of, is that she needs by the next election to be able to say to people, here are promises that we made in the 2019 manifesto, and here are all these ones that we have delivered on, and tick them off. Because what she can't afford to do is go into the next election with someone saying, here's all these things you promised in 2019. Can you tell us any of them that you've actually done? And the answer to be, well, not really. Yeah,
and also, doesn't she need to turn around to people and say, look, we've put more money in your pocket, either by removing the health and social care levy, we're taking VAT off energy bills, giving people the equivalent of some sort of cost of living furlough. Just before we go, Gordon, let's just speak, the live streamers here through the timetable. So we've obviously just had that announcement that Liz Truss has won the Tory party leadership race. She's given her speech where she's talked about delivery and her priorities, which are cutting tax, delivering on energy bills and supply, and the NHS. What then happens is that the Truss administration, as it is now newly formed with some of the old spads, Gordon, they go where now? They can't go to Downing Street yet because she hasn't been made Prime Minister, so they go off and they start plotting their team.
I would assume they will go to her campaign headquarters just off Smith Square, where they've been based for the entirety of the campaign. She will have a very good idea of who she wants to appoint to the cabinet. This isn't going to be start from scratch now. She'll have been, well, we know she's been talking about this for quite a long time now with her aides, and she will have probably a list of every cabinet post and then some that she's already got written down, and really then it's just a case of making sure those people are happy to take those jobs. She can't formally do that until she's got the job tomorrow.
So that's right. She's only the leader of the party now, and as they've the majority party, she can then go to the Queen after Boris Johnson has tendered his resignation, and she can say, I'm now in a position to form a government, and the Queen will accept that. There'll be the kissing of hands, which is just a handshake. It's not a literal kissing of hands.
There is a brush, isn't there?
There's a brush of hands.
Brush of lips on the
This reminds me of a brush pass, which you sometimes get on the
brush by.
So let me just quickly talk you through the timetable tomorrow. By the way, you can find this all on the Telegraph website. So we have got the timetable, we've got the cabinet runners and riders, we've got Gordon's piece on her first 100 days, Liz Truss, and what she's going to do. Gordon and I are now going to go into the newsroom and write yet more pieces of coverage. So It's a one-stop shop, telegraph.co.uk for all of this. And don't forget to follow the live blog where our colleague Jack Maidman and others will be filling the live blog with every cough and spit of what's going on today and tomorrow. So tomorrow kicks off at 8:30 with Boris Johnson making his farewell speech on the steps of Number 10. He'll then depart Downing Street for the last time and fly to Aberdeen. He will then arrive at Balmoral late morning. The Queen is obviously in Balmoral. She's not coming down to Buckingham Palace because of her mobility issues at the age of 96. He'll be ushered into the drawing room where for the first time in history he will relinquish his role there. Then he will depart and Liz Truss will arrive early afternoon where she'll be invited to see the Queen and appointed as Britain's next Prime Minister. She will then fly back to London at around 2 p.m. She will be briefed on national security matters in the plane, and then at 4 p.m. she will arrive at Downing Street and make her first speech as Prime Minister. Then later on Tuesday and into the evening, we will expect not only cabinet appointments, but also her to have congratulatory phone calls. We think that her first call will be with Ukraine President Zelensky. And then on Wednesday kicks off with the meeting of the new cabinet. And of course, Liz Truss doing her first PMQs against Sir Keir Starmer. Gordon Rayner, you've been a legend. I hope you've enjoyed watching and listening to us, folks. Thank you for joining the Telegraph live stream. We're always live streaming, we're always blogging, we're always reporting, and we're always there.
And there's the podcast.
First with the story. We've got to do Chopper's podcast next. Tune into that when that comes out later this week. Thanks for joining us. I've been Camilla Tominey. I've been joined by Gordon Rayner. Thank you and enjoy the rest of this eventful week in the world of politics.